move on to what's going to be happening on Wednesday. Around this time, you'll be watching the budget speech next week, presented by the Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni. The huge challenges facing the Minister. To put it all very simply, there are many needs and not enough money. There are also huge demands to fix state-owned entities. Well, joining us now to discuss what he'll be looking for is Bonang Mohale, someone who's played a big role in organised business in South Africa for many years, currently the chair of the Bidvest Group. Bonang, good afternoon. Thanks so much for coming in here in Newsroom 405.
Stephen, thank you for having me, but most importantly, a very warm welcome to your maiden presentation today.
You're part of history. You're the first interview on my show. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, it's obvious government is running out of money. Tito Mboweni, the finance minister, in a very difficult spot, and there are huge demands. Do you actually expect anything out of the budget? Has he got space to do anything at all?
In fact, from the Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, we do. Because first of all, he's very level-headed. He really gets it as to what our challenges are. But also, he's been the one brave soul to even proffer a solution in the economic paper that he gave and shared with us, much to the chagrin of the people that are still wedded to socialism and probably communism. So we want to support him in saying he comes in at a time where we have had 4 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, and in fact contracting GDP growth, when the NDP 2030 at the upper end says we ought to be growing at 5.4% to be able to absorb the 1.2 million young people that get onto the job market. But also it comes at a time when all the medium-term budget policy statements have been missed by a mile by the time we come to the budget speech. So the expectations of business is that really we should go back to the basics. Number one, we need leadership. Number 2, we need to fix fundamentally what is wrong with this economy. Number 3, I think we need to put South Africa back onto an upwards positive trajectory. Fourthly, I think for us we need to continue to root out and defeat state capture. When one considers that in 4 years we have wasted 1.5 trillion South African rands, that's 2/3 of what we collect from SARS. Every year for the last 9 wasted years, we've been siphoning off, on average, about 100 billion South African rands just to the 2 Zupta families. The last 2 for us is to ensure that you fix the state-owned enterprises and state-owned companies, all more than 740 of them, because they've become a very heavy albatross around South Africa's fiscus. The last one is probably we need a new social compact between and amongst all the social partners, because we have to set South Africa on a different trajectory.
There's been all sorts of talks at NEDLAC recently. I mean, is that social compact? And the President campaigned on this in his ANC election campaign in 2017, and you were one of the people who were supporting him in that campaign. He said there'll be a social compact between business, government, Labour. I haven't seen any signs of it, have you?
Knowing the President, he loves summits and he loves building a consensus. It takes a bit of time, people become impatient, but over a long period of time, it makes sure that everybody's buy-in has been obtained right at the forefront. And what you lose out in the planning process, you get in the sustainability of the solutions that are going to emerge. But I think what we have seen in the last 9 wasted years is the juniorization of NEDLAC, where the ministers were not coming, the CEOs were not coming. In fact, ministers and CEOs were hashing deals behind NEDLAC's back. When you consider that this is absolutely world-class, among the very first in the world where the 3 partners are in, and we put in civil society much later, it should be much more resilient than it has been up until now.
Big changes announced to the electricity sector, depending on how you read the speech from the President on Thursday night. Some people say it's big changes. Do you think that the electricity sector is actually going to change? Is Gwede Mantashe, the Minister of Energy, holding things back in your view?
You know, those who don't learn from history are bound to repeat its mistakes. In Nigeria, we saw a Minister of Energy who also had a generation capacity and company, and therefore it was in his interest to make sure that the electricity is never stable. Now we have politicians and civil servants who are benefiting from open cycle gas turbines when we ban the 2 billion budgeted diesel, which comes out at 10 billion in 1 year, and there are no consequences. So in the past, I don't think our ministers, and indeed the civil servants, had a vested interest in seeing a stable and a working Eskom. Now that we have added the radar, and now we have a new Tumamina and the advent of the new dawn, there's a seriousness, there's a consciousness. There is much more focus on fixing this fundamentally. And again, let's not kid ourselves. We knew in 1970 that we're going to run out of generation capacity. We did nothing. We knew before the 2010 World Cup that our kit is old, is dilapidated, and it needs to be fixed, but we said keep it on at whatever cost. Now we're paying the cost. For 18 months, we have a new normal where it's now load shedding. We're losing between 1 billion and 3 billion a year in the economy just from blackouts. But I think what should pain us more than anything else is that all of this is self-inflicted, self-harm that we should have done something about a long time ago, but we didn't.
All right, Bonang, you're a prominent South African. You were on set with us when that news broke this afternoon from the FW de Klerk Foundation, issuing a statement, retracting the statement issued on Friday in which the foundation said, and I think they were speaking for the former president or the last apartheid president when he said that apartheid was not a crime against humanity. Do you welcome that that's been retracted now? We welcome it very warmly, but also we say as business, we found it very preposterous that any of the top brass in the National Party government could say that they didn't know that the United Nations have declared apartheid as a crime against humanity in 1964. And then the United Nations Security Council endorsed this in 1986. But as if that's not enough, here in South Africa, we had our own very comprehensive but extensive process, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, chaired by Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Mpilo Tutu, where the National Party protagonists were heavily involved. Therefore, to have a former deputy president lie in the manner that he did publicly when he's got a reputation and a legacy that you should be worrying about, to us was truly unbelievable. Lastly, you know, this notion of contrition means that you have to continuously ask for forgiveness and be eternally grateful for the mercy shown, because contrition must be an ongoing process. Bonang Mohale, thank you very much indeed. Really do appreciate it. The chairman of the group Bidvest.